What's the difference between an Old Testament and a New Testament prophet?
Yeah, we have probably about 2 chapters on that in the book. The biggest one in the old covenant, God's spirit was on individuals uniquely. Actually, there was only 3 categories of people in the old covenant economy who were ever referred to as anointed: prophets, priests, and kings. And in their worldview, only those 3 types of people, were by divine design entitled to hear from God. And I don't just mean Yahweh, but in the Semitic and the pagan Eastern mindset, the idea was that you had to be, woo-hoo, somebody special to commune with the divine.
Huh.
It was actually considered illegitimate, for instance, for anyone who wasn't one of those kind of people to have a supernatural experience. If you had a supernatural experience, it was imperative that you would go find one of those specialists, and they would interpret it for you. In the
Interesting.
new covenant, yeah, we could actually expand on that. They actually considered uh, improper for common people to commune with the deity. If that happened, it would have been a very aberrant cultural experience. It would have been very disturbing, and they would have looked for a prophet or a priest or a king to come and interpret it for them.
So now we jump to the New Covenant, and what's the difference?
Well, the new covenant, the difference is that spirit which was poured out upon individuals. You read the old covenant, the spirit of the Lord came upon so and so, the spirit of the Lord left so and so. David would pray, the spirit of the Lord would come upon. That has changed. That's changed since the day of Pentecost. For everyone who has called on the name of the Lord in reality, and who has been put in union with the resurrected God man by the Spirit, everyone is anointed. There's no more special classes. The prophetic spirit. It's interesting that of all the verses that Peter could have chosen on the day of Pentecost to quote, he didn't quote a new creation verse. He
Hmm.
didn't quote. He didn't quote. I'll give you a new heart. He quoted a prophetic passage, and he specifically mentioned 3 disenfranchised classes of humanity who would be empowered to speak by sharing the prophetic spirit. The prophetic spirit has been poured out upon every new covenant believer. How it manifests is differently. How it manifests in each of us is differently, but it's upon every new covenant believer. I have a whole chapter on the universality of the prophetic spirit. We are all called to be a nation of prophesying priests and kings. Remember the account when Numbers 11, when they came to Moses and they complained that there were people prophesying outside the camp? And Moses' cry was, "Oh, to God that all of God's people were prophets." Well, that was fulfilled on the day of Pentecost. So there's no more special class of intermediaries like there were in the Old Covenant. Everyone is supposed to be able to access the prophetic spirit. Young men, old men, your daughters, your slaves will all have access to the prophetic spirit. And that would have blown people away in their culture. That children, indentured servants, and women would have access to, no, 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 no. Just prophet, priests, and kings have access to the holy communications of the divine, the oracles of the divine. The new covenant is characterized by universality.
Wow. It's something that when you think about it, it's pretty amazing because we can just become so familiar with it that it doesn't hit us how profound that
Mm-hmm.
was, that shift.
Yeah, it was, and I opened it up in the book in more detail. It was, how can I give a quick metaphor? Just imagine somebody came into our world and said, "Your money doesn't mean anything anymore. Your constitution doesn't mean anything more. Your civil rights are gone. Everything that you believe is normal no longer is. North is south, south is north." That's the kind of impact Peter's declaration would have had on their culture. The fabric of how they thought life should be by divine prescription. The word is cosmology, the order of the universe. How they viewed the order of the universe prescribed by what they thought was God was not just stopped, it was overturned. It was turned upside down. Their world was blown up.
Wow. That's amazing.
And one of my particular favorite passages is it's demonstrated to me in the life of Saul of Tarsus in his conversion. It's very profound. Now remember, Saul of Tarsus, rabbinically trained, right? A genius level guy, rabbinically trained, Pharisee, of the tribe of Benjamin. All right, so he meets the Lord in his person. That's powerful enough. But the first thing the Lord told him to do after his conversion was go and expose himself to an empowered member of the new creation. Paul would have understood, hey, prophets, priests, and kings, the Jewish prophetic tradition. But he just goes to a regular old disciple, submits himself to that disciple, and receives his sight. That imprinted Paul for the rest of his life of the reality of the union of the head with the body.
Wow.
He didn't go to a priest. He didn't go to the temple, make an offering for Moses. He had to be exposed to the reality of the new creation. And that is, hey, what you thought was reserved for specialists is now available to the least.